So we're here with Gurpreet Randhawa. She is a partner at the Sitka Law Group, and we're here in the boardroom of the Sitka Law Group talking about the foreign buyer tax and the British Columbia speculation and vacancy tax. But you always start with a preface.
Yes,
right?
So obviously we're discussing this for informational purposes. If you do require further information, please do reach out to your lawyers and accountants to obtain proper advice.
Yes, and the lawyer could also be you.
It could also be us.
Give them a call.
Yes.
Okay, so the speculation of vacancy tax. Now, because you typically handle things at the point of sale, so the property transfer tax and the foreign buyer tax are items that you're on top of all the time.
Yes.
Now, the speculation of vacancy tax is a little different because that's an annual thing for property owners.
Yeah.
But what are people asking you about in that respect?
So common question is, do I deal with it? And I deal with the foreign buyer tax because I have to adjust for it at completion. But speculation and vacancy tax is essentially a personal tax. So it follows the individual, meaning that if somebody is on the hook for it, I don't have to adjust for it as part of a purchase and sale transaction. It's handled by the individual who was responsible for the tax. And a common question that I get is if somebody is purchasing a second property, they'll sometimes reach out to me and say, would this tax be applicable in my situation? So that's something that comes up quite a bit. And if the tax is payable, it really comes down to citizenship and residency. So a Canadian citizen or permanent resident who is not a satellite family, we'll get into what that is, who is responsible for the tax would pay 0.5%. That's for 2019. And somebody who's a member of a satellite family or a foreign national would pay 2% for 2019.
Okay, so describe satellite family.
Yeah, so a satellite family is essentially somebody or a couple who claims less than 50% of their income within BC or Canada. So they're really looking at where income is claimed in assessing whether or not you're on the hook for the full tax.
So an example might be, for instance, a family where the parent is deriving their income from Europe or Asia or something like that, and then they have their kids in Victoria going to school or something. That would be a satellite family. Okay.
Exactly.
Another question I'm sure you get is if somebody is in the process of buying a home or selling their home and the house isn't sold yet but it's empty. Is there a speculation tax there?
Yeah, so essentially what's reviewed is the use of the property as at December 31st of every year. So if the property was vacant for more than 6 months, then you potentially are on the hook for it, especially if it's not your principal residence. So if, for example, you're in the process of selling, you've purchased another property.
An example, for instance, would be somebody who's been posted or moved to the States, and they've got to go, so they've got a house, and it may be on the market for some time because it's a special house or something. And if it's empty for a few months, then the key is that December 31st date, right?
Yeah, what was the use throughout the year as at that date? And there are several exemptions and credits for speculation tax, like for principal residence, rental property, if you need to be moved to long-term care, if you've inherited property, and some of these exemptions are time limited, but it is very important to get some advice if you do own a second property within
Can we
the
talk
CRD.
really quickly about that inherited property thing? So somebody has inherited a property, of course this is not expected. You know, it's a sad, unfortunate situation where a loved one or family members died and all of a sudden there's this property which obviously is not their principal residence. So when does that speculation tax kick in?
So what's happening right now is that there's an exemption for the year of death of the owner of that property and the year that the beneficiary essentially acquires the property. But very time limited. So I think there's a story in the media right now about somebody who had inherited property years ago.
And did nothing about it.
Did nothing about it. Used it as a secondary residence because I believe they lived in the States, and they actually have been assessed for speculation tax because it's not their principal residence and it's not a rental.
Well, you know, there's so much to know, not only about the speculation of vacancy tax, but also the foreign buyer tax. And as we said, you should always get advice from your solicitor and accountant, right? And you can always reach out to Gurpreet and your team here at the Sitka Law Group.
Absolutely.
Great.